Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers Journal of the Vaccine Year. It is Friday, June 25th. I'm Jerry Roberts, joined by our all-star panel of top local journalists, Josh Molina and Jade Martinez-Pogue from Newshawk, and Nick Welsh from The Independent. Thanks all for being here. First, our COVID update. The death toll in Santa Barbara County is steady at 455. I guess, Jade, we're only averaging about 5 new cases a day. 50% of the population overall vaccinated, but there were some strange, interesting numbers in terms of disparities among people who are vaccinated in terms of ethnicity and race. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. When you look at the public health website, it shows that the highest percentage, the ethnicity group with the highest percentage of vaccinations are the Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander group, followed by the white residents and then Asian residents. But if you look at there was a chart that says how many individuals were vaccinated in those age groups as well. And the Hispanic and Latino and white residents had the most numbers. The Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander, you can't even click on the chart because there's just, I think, so few of that population in our county. But yeah, the Hispanic Latino, even though I think they make up 48% of our population, continue to be vaccinated at slower rates than the white.
Only 36% and only 28% for Black residents compared to 64% for white. What explanations do the public health folks have for that?
They don't give, I think there's just, with the historical, testing of vaccines on the brown people, I think maybe that causes some hesitancy, but they haven't really given much explanation. They just said that, they're trying to target those groups with the mobile clinics and just do more outreach to try and make the numbers more equal, but nothing too specific.
I mean, it's a huge deal because, the big threat now, and they're talking about this Delta variant, talking about another wave in the fall, but the vaccines are effective against it. So it's only people at risk who don't have the vaccines.
And the numbers really haven't changed. They've been pretty low for the county's Black and brown populations since the beginning, and it stayed that way. And I know the county said they've done various things, but it really doesn't seem to have moved the needle that much in terms of the percentages. I think a lot of the numbers, and I'm not sure because I haven't done the deep dive, but I think it's North County is way disproportionately not participating.
And I think that a lot of this population has multiple jobs. I mean, I think it's a real thing that there's just not enough time to schedule an appointment and go do it. 2-3 jobs. For those of us who did get vaccinated, it was a wait, it was a delay. You had to schedule your appointment, and I think that's a barrier to some people. Certainly, obviously, there's some cultural barriers too. Of I don't really want to get vaccinated because I don't know if it's going to affect me long term. That's probably part of it as well.
Yeah, because I suppose inevitably then the vaccination rate would kind of flip in terms of people who are getting COVID again or hospitalized or dying from it, which I think goes to the issue of systemic racism again. It certainly will be argued that way. So it's
because if you look at the number of people who have been hospitalized or the percentage of people hospitalized, Latinos way disproportionately hospitalized. I think 48% of the county population is Latino, and 67% of the people hospitalized are Latino, and I think 55 or 56% of people who died. So it's the numbers are pretty striking.
Yeah. All right. Well, in Minneapolis today, Derek Chauvin, the the cop who killed George Floyd is being sentenced. And of course, that event set off this national conversation about a race. And there was also a report, Nick, about racial disparities in the criminal justice system from the county. And what did that show?
Well, what is called the RRI report, which is the Relative Rate Index, and they look at what it shows is that if you are black or brown skinned, youth or adult, you are significantly more likely to be stopped by law enforcement. It shows that you are significantly more likely to be booked by law enforcement. It shows you are significantly more likely to be incarcerated than your white counterparts. But if you are a white-skinned adult or juvenile and you are in the criminal justice system, you have a significantly higher chance of getting diverted into non-criminal justice related options. I think that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. And again, what was the explanation or possible explanations that were provided I mean, it was a big deal that they had the data and everybody was like saying, hey, we have this baseline data, but I mean, what does it mean?
Well, what it means is really anybody's debate. If you are Steve Lavanino or Bob Nelson, the two county supervisors from up north, you're going to say this is more of a reflection of socioeconomics than racism. It means that poor people are more likely to get in trouble because for a host of reasons than people who have more money and more education. And if you are the supervisors to the south, you are much more likely to think that there is an element of systemic racism. But very strikingly, they did not get into they stayed away from the why of it. They tried to stay away from using the term systemic racism almost. Really what they wanted to do was show that here are 6 steps along the way that you go, a typical person who gets in trouble with the law takes, and how it breaks one way if you're white and how it breaks another way if you're black or brown. And they really just wanted to focus on that and keep it at that so it doesn't get into the supercharged ideological, are you a racist or are you not debate.
Yeah. Hey, so
Hey, Nick, sorry, can I ask a question? What about access to attorneys? Does that have anything to do with it? So if you're somebody who can pay for a better attorney than the public defender, do you get a better sentence that way?
That would definitely enter into it, but that wouldn't explain why you're arrested or stopped more by law enforcement, because that's a step before anybody would have an attorney. But yeah, obviously, anecdotally, you and I both have seen situations where if you have a good attorney, you can get away with a lot of stuff early on.
yeah, never mind about good attorneys.
Check yourself into. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. So what was your sense of what comes next with this? So they've been pushing for the data. They got the data. Everybody's like, holy cow, this is amazing. So what happens next?
I think they need to share the data among all the law enforcement entities in the county and maybe, have the district attorney and the public defender make similar sets of data to just get more detail, more information to look at the bigger picture. But I think they do need to start analyzing those other drivers of, why are they more likely to be booked? Why are they more likely to be held or, not get these diversion opportunities? So I think that's really the next step, because you do have the numbers, which is great. We didn't have that before, but you have to be able to do something with those.
Yeah.
And figure out why they are.
Did Sheriff Bill or DA have anything to say about this yet? No.
They didn't weigh in. And that is really kind of the next step. It would be really interesting to see what they make of it and how they suss it out and how they explain it. I mean, I know that Tanya Heitman, who was the probation chief, she said one of the simple things we can do is the fees that we charge people, so like, along the way, if the more you put people in jail or the more you charge them fees, the disproportionate impact it's going to have, or the disruptive impact it's going to have on the lives of people living close to the poverty line. And it will be much more disruptive to them and their families. And so what you try to do is, to the extent that you can eliminate fees, it's a simple thing, they're going to try to do that. And they've already done some of that.
Yeah, I find it interesting that they, mostly avoided referencing systemic racism, which of course is the, central issue that's come out of the George Floyd situation and all that's followed. And of course, we have this national polarization, debate, culture war, whatever you want to call it, with the Republicans just hammering critical race theory, which is a specific thing which they have now overlaid on everything, any discussion of race or racism. And we also have, even in California, this push against, liberal law enforcement. You have a recall in San Francisco as well as in LA of the district attorney. There's a statewide debate, and I think you really see the national political debate formulating about crime and race. So I wonder how long it's going to, kind of be neutral at the Board of Supervisors, or whether somebody's going to jump in politically.
Well, just to give a plug to our colleague down at the bottom of the screen, Josh Molina, in his interview with Barrett Reed on his podcast, Barrett Reed went out of his way to pick a fight with Doss Williams and say, while I appreciate Doss Williams' honesty, what we see here in Santa Barbara County, while they talk about, criminal justice reform and getting, innocent people out of jail, or what we see is an increase in property crime. And we see, what he believed to be an increase in violent crime. So it's very clear that, in the city council race, Barrett Reed, who has emerged thus far as the only challenger in the council races, is going to try to take the, law and order platform.
Yeah, that is interesting. That is interesting, because I'm not sure how much of that plays in District 4. Maybe it does. I don't know. But he talked, Josh, about the lawless element of the
Yeah.
whole.
He will be strong. He will be strong, and he will not be afraid
I will be strong on homelessness.
So he's the chairman of the slow talkers of America, I guess.
He's just trying to make sure his message resonates. I have a question for you, Jerry, and maybe Jade and Nick can weigh in on this. How does Jerry's face get more uncomfortable, when he says Doss Williams or when he says critical race theory? Which situation do you see him uncomfortably snarling?
I'm being pensive. That's all.
You know what? I thought he did a really good job of being sort of middle of the road there when he said critical race theory, because normally that makes his head explode.
Well, no, I mean, it is, because the critical race theory is like a specific thing, and it has ideas and notions, which you can, your head can explode about sometimes if you think, but it's been transformed into whatever, it's just a code word now, like every other code word that they use for race. It's like, oh, the white people are threatened. We got to do something about it.
It's code word for white people who think, can we just move on? Can we just move?
Yeah. And Jade, just to close on this at the county. So Doss Williams is usually the first one to call out systemic racism. What did he say?
Well, it was interesting. He obviously was happy that they had those numbers, but Bob Nelson said that he was scared about, giving this presentation or hearing the presentation, because he thought it would give people the opportunity to say, yes, they're racist, the system is broken. And then that's when Doss came back in. He was like, well, I think these numbers do show that this is an issue. So,
but he was pretty restrained, I think.
Yeah, I was surprised. Both him and Greg Hart didn't get as much into it as I thought they were going.
Also, Nelson is really emerging as a force, much more than his predecessor, whose name I know.
I think he's really, I mean, when you look at the Board of Supervisors with Nelson in there, he's really trying to play a constructive role. He's trying to engage as opposed to just posture. And I think the supervisors as a unit are remarkably cohesive in terms of their deliberations and, the sense of good faith in their debates even.
Yeah.
Sometimes Josh will get a little bit on his high horse and start wagging his finger of moral rectitude at people about one thing and the next. But in general, people, the supervisors have a strikingly harmonious way of debating stuff, particularly compared with the city council.
Right, and they're certainly cohesive on the issue of cannabis, not to bring that up, except for Joan Hartman occasionally, and they're also cohesive about spinning about how much the taxes are, which amounts to about 12 cents in the budget. But let's move on. So Josh, we had our latest housing debate throwdown at the council, if you will. A big kind of blockbuster project at 825 De La Vina. What's the headline on all that?
Well, the city approved a 21 unit apartment building at 825 De La Vina. It was approved by the ABR, and then the nearby residents appealed it to the city council. So the council basically said, this is a good spot for housing. Like, if we can't put housing here, where can we put it? Because they saw it as urban infill. The nearby residents, however, said it was basically built from lot line to lot line, and it was going to block out the views of—
How many stories?
4 stories, a 4-story building. And yeah, it's a parking lot right now, and it's going to be a rectangular 4-story building once they build it. And there's homes next to it. There's some studios. There's another 3-story apartment building, and you're going to lose a lot of sunlight. So what was interesting about this was that the ABR denied, or they approved this project, said, yeah, it does fit within
the ABR being the Architectural Board of Review.
Right. And so they approved it, and then there was this appeal. So there was a site visit on Monday. So site visits are kind of cool because you get the council out in the real world to look at a location to decide, so they can get some perspective of what they're going to be voting on. Most site visits are kind of boring. It's like 3 or 4 people, some staff, it's 5 minutes and it's over. This case, a whole bunch of residents showed up, and they were not happy with the project. They were carrying signs, and Mayor Kathy Murillo, she didn't allow them to talk. She was very curt. She said that only council members are allowed to ask. This did not do anything for her reputation. These are public meetings, they're awkward, but anytime you have 4 members of the council show up, and they are agendized with public comment, and these were people who are not, city hall insiders. They're people who may never interface with city hall other than this project, but they are voters. They're older, more likely to vote, and they were shut down by her, and they were not happy about that. So that was the little bit of drama at the scene.
And
what I heard, what I thought was really striking was, as you said, 30 people showed up. They had posters and picket signs. So that, I think you need to pay attention to. I asked about that, and they said, what I was told was that they do not take minutes at the site visits. And so as a result, there is no public testimony ever taken. So that, it really is an opportunity for people to ask questions of the staff and sometimes the applicant, but so the idea that there's a back and forth, I was told, is not going to happen. But I think in another way, that by the time it got to the city council, the decision was already so irrevocably made. The only sort of yes or no that the council could make was whether or not the proposal as seen by the ABR in March was consistent with the proposal seen by the ABR in January. And so here we are in June, and people from the public say, hey, I want to up or down. And that's not even on the table.
That was not the question. And the vote was 5-2 to to approve it, and Kristen and Oscar voted against it. And the argument was the process, right? I mean, they weren't.
The
arguing-
process is completely needs to be fixed on this
We
one.
didn't hear from Oscar. We did hear from Kristen on it. But just to Nick's point, the site visit does have on the agenda a spot for public comment, but there's nothing in the Brown Act that says Kathy Murillo can't be nice. There's nothing in the Brown Act that says she can't be courteous and respectful. Okay. The easy way to handle that is
Thanks for the headline, Josh. Go ahead.
the easy way to handle that is this is technically a public meeting, but we don't traditionally take public comment. But I'm happy to stick around with you and answer all your questions because I'm the mayor and I
you're
want
right.
to make sure. She left. She was gone. The only one who hung out and talked to them was Kristen Sneddon.
Well, Kristen knows that, Josh, that we have 2 ears and only 1 mouth, so we listen more and talk less. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because Barrett is going to be all full bore for more housing. And now you got Kristen on record being against this housing. And then the other question I had is of the units, how many of them are in that, missing middle, affordable, whatever you want to call it, that the council's puny attempts to change the market for housing is aimed at?
These were market rate. There were two that would have been below market rate, which would have been moderate income inclusionary housing, but the rest would have been market rate apartments. Studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, so affordable by design.
So what do we
Kristen
think?
has, what's that?
Do you know what those rents will be?
They don't talk about rents. I think there was some rental study that recently was released that indicated, they'd probably run for about $3,500 for a 2-bedroom, something like that. So that's the current market conditions right now.
Which is a gentrifying dynamic. I mean,
Yeah.
that's got to be higher than the rents on that block. I assume. I don't
Yeah, but then the what they will say, the proponents of that housing is that it there's a ladder, so like it frees up the whole housing chain. So the people who are living in the less expensive rentals can now move up to those, and that frees up rental housing for somebody below in that market. That's
Yeah,
the
the other-
Trickle down theory.
Yeah. The other footnote on that, of course, is they should have known they had no chance when Steve Americana showed up on behalf of the developer, Mr. Super Lawyer, former city attorney as well. All right, and then we also had a vote, I guess, on a measure about the parklets on State Street, and the right-thinking people on the Historic Landmarks Commission and a couple of architects were screaming about it because it looks like a garage sale down there. But I guess the arguments of the restaurant people ended up carrying the day, huh, Josh?
Yeah, so the city put out a staff report that was really unclear. It made it seem as though there was going to be this wholesale removal of outdoor dining and sidewalk dining and parklets, and you'd had to read it a few times to sort of distinguish what they were doing. So a lot of the restaurant owners were like, "What is going on?" At the end of the day, what they had proposed was no new parklets. These are the ones on the side streets off State Street. No new fixed enclosures, outdoor dining with roofs on State Street, and no new sidewalk dining. They had proposed the whole shebang. In the end, all they approved was, hey, if you put out tables and chairs on the sidewalk on State Street without paying into the city system for that space, if you weren't part of that program before the pandemic, you've got to remove those. So that's the only thing that's going to change. And everything else is going to stay the same for now. And they're going to let the State Street subcommittee decide what the future is going to look like. But I mean, it's sort of, again, inability to or there's like a disconnect between what the staff are doing and what the restaurant owners want to do. It looks really cluttered, but there's a lot of people downtown and they don't want to mess that up.
So
No, it was-
basically, the council pushed back on the staff report. They didn't do.
Yes.
what
Yeah.
the staff
I
recommended.
mean, City Hall is hearing a lot of complaints, like it does look like a big garage sale. People who don't own restaurants are saying, hey, all this foot traffic isn't helping us. Our sidewalks are closed. Nobody can get on our sidewalks.
So retail
And if
not
you're-
happy.
And the handicap access people are saying we can't use the sidewalks, but still, the way the staff report was written, you would think come July 9th, wholesale changes are gonna happen. Maybe State Street won't be, closed off to cars. It wasn't clear. It was really a cattle prod staff report. And people responded as if they'd been prodded. And it just seemed like gratuitously self-inflicted wound by City Hall in terms of making everybody get agitated.
Yeah. And what was the vote? Was the vote unanimous to keep it till when? Till next March, right? They're not going to change anything?
Yeah, it's approved through March 2022, and at any point they can decide to continue it again, which they might,
Jay, do you have a favorite parklet that you attend or that you eat at?
I went to the one at Mitza the other night. It was really nice. I like that one. They
Was
have
it
the
crowded? Was it crowded?
a little bit. It was like a Tuesday night, so not too crowded. But
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Everybody was home watching the council meeting.
that went till 10:30. Yes.
Yeah.
hey, before we do our little politics roundup, I gotta ask, there are two big hires that have been a little below the radar. Josh, you wrote about the new community development director. I think you did too, Nick, but they hired a public works director now this week too. And, we're just talking about diversity and stuff. And here's two more, middle-aged white guys. I don't know how middle-aged they are, but I don't know what sense did either of you have about that? There didn't seem to be anybody who questioned either of them.
Sounds like a good question for Nick Welsh.
I haven't, I have known nothing about the
Public works.
public works guy.
Yeah.
I know he is replacing Rebecca Bjork, who is now the assistant city administrator, but she had been a bomb-ass public works director.
This guy has a background in the military. He's
Well,
like a military
well,
logistics guy. So
What we need.
Me-
And then there's a new community development guy. He's a foodie architect from Santa Fe. He used to write a foodie blog for the weekly paper in Santa Fe. He's 41 years old. He did he was, I think, the head of the show in Santa Fe for a year or two. He initiated a big sort of permit by email program that I guess streamlined the system of permitting. So that would be a big bonus for right now, based on what people are complaining about. I haven't met him, but it sounds like somebody who'd hang out in the funk zone.
I wonder if.
Well, I mean, your point, Jerry, is, we had Jason Harris, finance director, community development director, public works director, and that's four spots, right? That our Paul has hired, 4 middle-aged white guys. So of course they're the most qualified for the job, right? No, I mean, I don't know, but if you're talking about diversity, that's never been a real strength of Paul Casey.
Well, it just seems strange that in the moment we're in, where people are looking at everything, I think in a critical way about race, that nobody says a word about it down at the council or anything. I just found it strange myself, but.
Nobody's going to say a word because we have a council that's reactive. If somebody comes out and says it, they'll say in 2 years when they're, or next time they're running for re-election, they'll say, we called for diversity at City Hall. Like, it's just how the council is. Nobody does anything until somebody else does it first.
Yeah. Well, Jade, I know you read my exclusive interview with Joe Holland about having 2 elections this year. Do you get to vote in the council elections? What district are you in?
I believe I'm in the 3rd district, but I'm also moving in August, so I don't know where I'll end up.
Do you know where you're moving to?
Just closer to downtown, so.
You'll probably be in District 6. Then you could run against Megan. We want to congratulate her on her baby bump, which is now, I guess, official, Megan Harmon. And she still has no opponent. Eric Friedman still has no opponent. So the only race we get to watch is in District 4. But we do get to watch the mayor's race. And Josh, you mentioned Kathy's behavior at the site visit. And of course, famously snubbed the Chamber of Commerce event for reasons that remain unclear. Nick, what you wrote about that a little bit in the Poodle. What's your thought on that? Self-inflicted wound.
You know, I get it. She didn't, she told the chamber, I don't want the city's brand sullied by the sponsorship of Exxon, All American Pipeline Company, and SoCal Edison. These guys are eco villains. We don't want to be associated with them. I just think it was an opportunity to reach out at a time when you're supposed to be the mayor and you're supposed to dance with all devils. And even if it is the oil company or the Chamber of Commerce and the business community right now, coming out of the pandemic, this is really not the time to do that. You could have gone there, I think, and done Daniel and the Lions Den, said, said, look, we're all about climate change, we're all about sea level rise, and we're all about alternative energy, and it made a point of what the city is doing affirmatively and been there. I just think that Kathy has a hard time getting into the mayoral gear. She's much more comfortable, I think, being in that city council gear. And I think it was not a good move.
No, I think it was a really dumb move, but that's me. All right, Josh, who's on a podcast this week?
Well, I have Michael Montenegro, who is the founder of Chicana Culture SB on Instagram, and he's a historian. And so we had a really good conversation about Mexican American history, Chicano history, and just all the stuff going on in Santa Barbara. So that'll be out Sunday.
All right, and Jade, you got to work this weekend, or you get the weekend off?
Yeah, I have the Goleta's first in-person redistricting workshop is tomorrow. So
Ooh.
cover that.
Man, that's painful.
Huh? Do not operate heavy machinery while it's in reading.
You should get overtime for that.
Holy cow! What are you up to? Just everything again, Chief? How are things going over at the Independent? You got an office yet, other than that little hovel of yours?
Yeah, we still are in our little bird cage, our gilded bird cage.
I see
But
you
it's
have
fabulous.
you have a printer in back of you now, at least, so that's an upgrade.
That looks like a fax machine. Is that a fax or a print?
That's a copy machine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Josh Molina, Jade Martinez-Pogue, and Nick Welsh, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us, and we will see you next time on Newsmakers.
All right. You take care.
Stay safe. Stay out of the way of that Delta variant.